Sahib al-Asr al-Zaman on the start of this Ashra, which, as we know, is a time of sorrow and grief for the Holy Household. Inshallah, we'll start. I just have some announcements, quick announcements to make. Um, so thank you for joining us on this first night of our Muharram series. Um, we are still asking for sponsorship. So unfortunately, no one has come forward with a large donation for any of the nights. Um, we estimate it costs about 500 to 600 pounds for each night. Um, and so I do plead that in the love of Abu Abdullah Hussein, if someone would like, maybe as a memorial for their loved ones, to sponsor a night, then please do come forward. All of the 10 nights are free for sponsorship. So thank you. Um, we've been very lucky this year to have an edition of a children's workshop, which commences at 6:30. So please do come on time for that. This is for 5 to 13-year-olds. And as you can see from the display over there, it's the recreation of the Ashura scene. So please do bring your children involved, so they're also involved in Muharram, inshallah. We will be having Jama Maghrib, so please do come on time on 7:45 p.m. for that, so we can make a start early, inshallah. I'm also very pleased to say that we have a local youth reciter, Sayyid Mehdi Abedi, which a lot of the youth should know here. And please support him with your voices during Latam, and please take participation in it. This year, we've also opened the door, so this is an open majlis, where anyone of any faith, any background is welcome. We have to remember that the message of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam is universal. So please feel free and encourage others to also participate. We will also be having Q&A, inshallah, on some nights. So we will tell you in advance of the nights we plan to have Q&A, inshallah. We're also happy to have Sheikh Jaffer here with his books. As you may know, Sheikh has written two books concerning Yemen, which is for the purposes of charity, which he will be doing a book signing here, inshallah. As well as that, we have his previous books, which are one of them, which is absolutely beautiful, is on Kulthum, and it's probably the only book I've really read, literature, in Shia literature, which we can find on Sayyida. So that's the hidden treasure, and that's available. As well as there's a really good book among the scholars, so it describes the lives of the scholars, which is The Ways of the Righteous. Both of these books are available on the bookstore, and inshallah, we have the pleasure to also be hosting the book signing of the new books that Sheikh would be bringing, inshallah. I will speak more of that. There's a request that if you bring tabarruk, then please let us know beforehand. There are a list of items actually that we need. So if someone does want to bring tabarruk, if you could approach the kitchen staff, there's actually things which are recommended, which are just easier for us to distribute. So we do recommend your cooperation in this matter. So if you would like to sponsor or give tabarruk, then please speak to the kitchen staff, inshallah. So there's, as well as that, there's an Eid announcement, inshallah. We've got a short presentation for you. Thanks. Salawat. So there is a question. How many people here go to school? Raise your hands up if you go to school. So we got loads of people, mashallah, and parents know that school has started, and adults know because it's very busy on the roads. So alhamdulillah, education is one of the things that we are blessed with, and something perhaps that we take for granted. Now, a lot of people here sitting in this room know of Al-Qaim School. Raise your hands if you know of Al-Qaim School. Or 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like the sister's winning here. 1, 1, 2. So perhaps maybe the male audience does not know what Al-Qaim School is. So Qaim School is the first project that IUS did as a charity. Alhamdulillah, it now supports 200 students. It's been recognized by the Pakistan Education Board as a supreme example of a board. It's been funded by the people really sitting in this room. So I think everybody should be really proud of that achievement. Salawat. Now there's a very interesting quote, since it's the days of Imam al-Hussein, and he says, the most generous person is the one who offers help to those who don't expect him to help. So what he's saying is, we don't, you're getting something from someone you don't expect. Now, this is what's happened in this case. Seeing the success of Al-Qaim School, which is based in Layya, which is near Multan, for those of you know, in Pakistan, the community came forward and they said, oh, you're only taking 200 students. We need more students to be taken in. Such to an extent that a person has come forward, he's a farmer, and he's donated his land, which is one canal, which is 500 square meters, and he's saying, I want your organization to be building a second school here. Salawat. And that just goes to see the intention of the niyyah that the community here started with Al-Qaim School, that this has happened. So I'm very pleased to say that we're started and we've embarked on the second school, which is still nameless, in a sense that we're hoping for donors to come forward to take the project forward. So from Al-Qaim School, what you can see, we probably can't see because it's too far, is a statement from, so again, there's a positive side in a sense that, alhamdulillah, it's having an impact on the children, but there's still work which needs to be done. So we teamed up with Al Rehana Foundation, Rehana Jaffrey, who was based in Manchester, and she came forward, and the children that you're seeing now are the children which are for this second school construction. So what we're looking for, at first, we've got 3 phases. We need a minimum enrollment of 150 students. This is because the education board, which funds a body, needs at least 150 students in a school for it to come under the funding of PEB, Pakistan Education Board. It's in a purpose-built school. So we're building the boundary at the moment. It supports a very rural area. So Al-Qaim School was more central, whereas this is, like I say, it's a farm area, so it's a more rural area. Now, contribution to this is Sadqa Jariya. So as long as the school is there, and if you've planted 1 brick for it, then that stays until the school stays, until the education that you've given to that child stays. So again, this is a very, very good opportunity in these holy nights to avail this. The plan is to have 6 classrooms, to have 35 people per classrooms, 1 head teacher office, 1 staff room, 3 toilets basically for the children, the staff, and a storeroom. So you can see it's a very humble start. But what I'm asking for is for £10,000 for at least phase 1, which will have that. So in a sense, if you think that this £10,000 goes towards building a school, then it's a huge investment compared to what the equivalent of that money is for here. So again, I do plead. This is the man who's donated the canal, 500 square meters. So please do come forward. I'm appealing for this. So the sums are there. In total, we need £32,000, but at least for phase 1, I'm appealing to someone to come forward. There's more information on our website, ius.org.uk/aid, Pakistan School Appeal. So again, in these holy nights, this is the only time really I get to see and I get to show the funds that we need. So please, if who's definitely not a stranger to the IUS community, so would you please join me in a salawat by inviting him to the stage?
No, we don't need it now, but can I have a clicker? Thanks so much. For the love of Imam al-Hussein, please recite as-salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And for the love of Her Eminence Lady Zainab, please recite a second salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And your loudest salawat in honor of the awaited Savior of humanity, Imam al-Mahdi, Ajjalallahu ta'ala Faraj al-Sharif. If we can begin with a Surah Al-Fatiha, the thawab of which goes to all of our marhumin. Bismillah. Before we begin, I take this opportunity to thank the organizers and all of you as a community for inviting me back. It's an honor to be able to serve in these holy and grievous nights. And we extend our condolences first and foremost to the Imam of our time, the master of our age, Imam al-Mahdi, Ajjalallahu ta'ala faraj al-Sharif. We also extend our condolences to our Maraja al-Kiram, to all of our ulama, our teachers, our parents, our family members, all the mu'mineen and mu'minat around the world, and indeed to the whole of mankind, for the martyrdom of Sayyid al-Shuhada is a martyrdom for all of mankind. There's a poet who says, "The days of Hussein approach once again, bringing with him his eternal memory. Although confined to time he was, through his sacrifice, Hussein became the one who governed time. And as such, you and I begin our year in honor of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, in the hope that our a'mal in these 10 nights are accepted, insha'Allah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا الممجد بشير المصدق المصطفى الأمجد محمود الأحمد أبي القاسم محمد. وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعنة الله على الظالمين من الأولين والآخرين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المجيد وفرقانه الحميد وقوله الحق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله ولو آمن أهل الكتاب لكان خيرا لهم منهم المؤمنون وأكثرهم الفاسقون. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Awaited Savior of humanity, Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, my respected teachers, elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. In 1995, there was a debate between an astrobiologist and an evolutionary biologist. These two were giants in their fields and leaders of their respective areas of expertise. So an evolutionary biologist and an astrophysicist come together in order to have a debate. And the debate question was as follows: is it possible for us to be able to find life existing in another planet or not? And of course, these two great minds were going to debate this question from the angles of their own particular sciences. And so Ernest Mayr, the evolutionary biologist, would look at it through his particular experiences, research, and lens. And Carl Sagan, the astrobiologist, would look at it through his particular lens. So they're debating this question: do you think that one day we will ever find intelligent life on another planet? And of course, with this comes a number of questions that have to precede by priority. To what extent are we able to look into the universe? And when we look into the universe, to what extent are we able to actually perceive the existence of other creation? How then can we determine whether they are intelligent or otherwise? How then can we ever reach them in order to be able to make that link? Now, as this discussion was taking place, a following question was raised. It's quite an interesting question. And they asked the following. They said, is it better to be smart, or is it better to be stupid? Is it better to be smart, or is it better to be stupid? Now, by show of hands, how many here think it would be better to be smart? And in contrast, by show of hands, how many here think it's better to be stupid? There are a few hands up. I expected Hassan's hand to be up, not because he's stupid, but because he always likes to go against the grain. In the evolutionary biology sense, the argument was, it is better to be stupid. Why? Because those creatures, those creations that are lower on the evolutionary scale of intelligence, they tend to live longer as a species than those species that are higher on the intelligence level of the evolutionary scale. Take any creature, any animal that you wish to. If I was to choose just some at random and say spider, beetle, snake, cow, human being, if you chart their position in the evolutionary scale, how intelligent they are, you can actually see that by and large there is a principle in evolutionary biology which says that the smarter you are on that scale, the shorter the amount of time your species will live. And the opposite is true as well. That the lower you are on the evolutionary scale of intelligence, the longer your species is likely to live. Beetles, for example, as a species, should live for millions of years. There shouldn't be anything by and large that is going to destroy them, but something phenomenal like, let's say, an asteroid hitting the Earth. But if you're higher up on the intelligence scale, you are likely to live for a shorter amount of time as a species. So the question raised was, is it better for you to be smart or to be stupid? Now, for the majority of us, we all raised our hand, it's better for us to be smart. But from an evolutionary biology perspective, your species will only live a shorter amount of time. If you are, quote unquote, stupid on the scale, you will live for millions of years as a species. So the purpose of that question was, in regards to the debate, well, if we're looking for intelligent life, the likelihood is intelligent life is very difficult to find. Granted, it's hard to find intelligent life on Earth, let alone out there in the depths of the universe. But for us to be able to find intelligent life out there in the universe is so difficult because intelligent life only lives for a shorter amount of time. If beetles, for example, live for millions of years as a species, how long do you think it is that a species like our own, the humankind, should live for based upon the evolutionary scale? According to this debate, a human being should live for around 100,000 years as a species before it is either destroyed or it destroys itself. Human beings should live around 100,000 years, and then they should destroy themselves or be destroyed based on the factors of evolutionary scale. Question: how long has the human species been here for? More than 100,000 years? Definitely. Several 100,000 years? Definitely. If you look into anthropology, archaeological records, carbon dating, species has been here for at least several 100,000 years, if not longer. What does that tell you? If the human being as a species is only supposed to live for 100,000 years, but we've been here for 10 times longer than that, it tells you that we're long overdue either to destroy ourselves or to be destroyed. We're long overdue for our species to be annihilated. We're not like beetles. The fact that we have such control over our own environments, the fact that we can build, we can ensure that distances come closer. The fact that we have such relationships and interconnectivity amongst various communities suggests to us that we are long overdue destroying ourselves or being destroyed in some particular way. Our discussion over these next 9 nights, inshallah, will be to look at the way in which the Holy Quran and the Ahadith discuss this particular issue of why and how communities rise and how they end up falling and destroying their own selves. The reason why we have chosen this is because if we look back within to the concept and the mission of the movement of Karbala, it was to be able to save the Muslim civilization that was teetering on the edge of self-destruction only by virtue of being at the hands of Banu Umayyah for only a couple of decades. The movement of Karbala took place in 60, 61, 62 after Hijrah, in terms of the beginning of that movement and the way in which it took place. Which means it's only approximately 70 years since the mab'ath of the Holy Prophet of Islam, Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. The average lifespan of the human being for you and I is 60, 70 years old. And of course, with modern medicine, it's slowly starting to creep up. But let's say the average lifespan of a human being is 70 years, give or take. That means in the period of one lifespan, from the time that the Holy Prophet of Islam announced his Risala to the time in which the movement of Karbala took place, that is one lifespan. Islam was announced. It was able to liberate those people that were living in such destructive, backwards ways. It was able to soar to the peak of its potential, and then it was able to drop and move backwards so quickly that at the time of Banu Umayyah, it almost existed in a way in which Islam wasn't there. That the leadership at that time had come together in order to reenact what their grandfathers had wanted to achieve, which was the rivalry between Banu Hashim and Banu Umayyah. The hatred that Banu Umayyah held for Banu Hashim was to destroy whatever Banu Hashim stood for, which in that time was the message of Islam in its reality, in its perfect sense. In 70 years, Islam is on the stage of destruction, implosion, being annihilated, such that nothing exists other than its name. And had the movement of Karbala not taken place, we often hear that Islam in its reality would have all but been destroyed by virtue of what Banu Umayyah were reigning upon the Muslims of that time. 70 years, and can rise to its potential and drop to the point of being in a state of destruction. His Eminence, the Master of the Martyrs, Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ajal. As he departs Medina for the last time, has that very famous statement. He gives his mission statement where he says, إِنِّي لَمْ أَخْرُجْ أَشِرًا وَلَا بَطِرًا وَلَا مُفْسِدًا وَلَا ظَالِمًا وَإِنَّمَا خَرَجْتُ لِطَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحِ في أمة جدي محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. اللهم صل على. I am not rising because I am seeking fame or because I want leadership or I'm making mischief or I'm going to be an oppressor. These are not the reasons as to why I'm rising against Yazid ibn Muawiyah. Rather, the reason I rise is solely one, to create reformation within the ummah of my grandfather. And how am I going to do that? I'm going to perform Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar, and by that it will bring the community back to the time of my grandfather and my father Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhim ajma'een. Allahumma salli ala. Reform. And the way in which that reform will take place will be through Amr bil Ma'ruf wa Nahy anil Munkar. All I have to do is go back about in achieving reform through this methodology, through this way. Think about our global civilization today. And think about whether it it is also teetering edge of its own destruction and implosion. Whether it's actually a functioning global human society, or whether by virtue of the way in which it is structured, there is so much exploitation, so much hatred, so much abuse, that actually, if it continues on in this direction, what will be the outcome of our human civilization in 10, 50, 100 years' time? The first thing for us is to think about is that we have a global population of 7.2 billion people. 7.2 billion people. By the end of the year 2100, our global population is estimated to be at 12 billion people. So we will add approximately 5 billion people. Our current population is 7 billion people, which means that we're going to add on approximately 2/3 more of our current population. Think about that for a minute. Imagine now you have a finite amount of resource: water, food, land space, oxygen. What happens when you add 5 billion people to the planet in the space of 1.5 generations? We're currently at 2018. And we stated that from the time the Holy Prophet of Islam rose to the time in which Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam had to rise in order to save a civilization, to save a community, was 70 years. So you just have to add 70 to 2018. We're coming close to 2100, the year 2100. 70 years. A community can be stable, rise, fall, be on the verge of destroying itself altogether. In terms of the numbers and the way in which we distribute what we have with ourselves, this causes us a great amount of concern for us and the way in which the Western civilization will think about how it appropriates, or rather misappropriates, those different resources that are going to be needed in the coming century. Or, for example, if you imagine another issue of the way in which the human society, the structure is between ourselves. Take, for example, just one issue about race hatred or fascism and the re-rise of fascism. The last time fascism was in the 1930s, it wasn't an ordinary thing. It killed 80 million people in war, in World War II. And that was with the type of weapons and technologies that were available in the 1930s all the way to 1945. Right now, the way in which especially the Western civilization is, and the rise again of fascism, it's a very concerning thing, especially for you and I sitting in this hall as Muslims who are primarily the target of that type of fascism today. Think about it. Britain, United States of America, France, Germany, Hungary, Poland. Only 2 days ago, we got the outcome of the results in the election in Sweden. And the rise of the far right in the last 10 years has been meteoric. We don't have to guess what the potential outcome is next for our own civilization if we don't stand up against that, if we're oblivious to it, or we just allow things to unravel the way in which they go. Think about global and the way in which we, according to the majority of scientists, global warming will render part of our planet uninhabitable by the year 2050. Uninhabitable. Either the way in which topsoil is, it will be destroyed. Either it will be submerged under low-lying water as lowlands. It will be submerged under water. There will be mass fires. The climate will change such that the environment will not be as safe to live in. When you already add to Muslim and Western modernity, Because the Muslim world has its own particular challenges. The Western world has its own particular challenges, but they overlap so much today that when we talk about them, we cannot really separate them because we are part and parcel of both of them, and we are all part and parcel of the global civilization itself. Over these 9 nights, inshallah, what will we be looking at? Amongst the discussions we will be looking at is as follows. For example, we will ask into the NHS every week. Ultimately, it didn't even matter whether it was true or not. And those very same people ended up getting positions back in the cabinet. And tomorrow will probably end up being the prime minister when the current one is forced out. What happens when you and I no longer can speak truthfully? When there's so much fake news that what you read, I don't believe in, and what I read, you don't believe in. Is that healthy for a society to function mutually amongst each other? If not, how do we overcome living in such a society? And these, for example, will be the types of discussions that we will have in our series, inshallah, looking at the premises of why societies and communities fall and why they rise. And for us to be able to understand that in our own individual lives, we contribute to the rising and fall of society, and collectively we will contribute to either the rising or the fall of our own global civilization, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For tonight, inshallah, as our night 1 introduction, our topic for the night is this. What are the 4 potential outcomes, according to the Quran, of any civilization? When you look at civilizations in the Quran, often Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about them in the context of their destruction. وَكَمْ أَهْلَكْنَا مِنَ الْقُرُونِ. How many communities have we destroyed previously? And that is mentioned over and over and over in the Quran. Not just in that sense, but in another sense. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may say to you, for example, سِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَانْظُرْ كَيْفَ كَانَ عَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُكَذِّبِينَ, for example. Travel through the land. And I want you to observe how the ending of the previous communities were. Those who lied, those who rejected God, those who falsified, and so on and so forth. A central theme in the Quran is the rising and falling of civilizations. Why a community became successful and why it fell ultimately at the end. Now it could be that you and I relate this to our own individual selves, because every verse, even though it's about a community, can also be about me as an individual. Therefore, for me to be a success in my life as an individual, all of these ayat will be relative. If I want to know what makes me successful and rising, but also the potentiality of my own downfall, my own self-destruction, these verses become applicable. If I want to think about it from the family level, as someone who is responsible within a family unit, why the family can become successful or also self-destruct, these verses become important. If I want to understand it from this community or this kind of community as a group of people together, what makes us successful? How many times have you seen communities break apart? How many times have you seen communities fight each other, ultimately destroying what they have between themselves? You have one wealthy donor against another. You have one famous family against another. You have this group that come from this particular city against this particular, and they fight. And it becomes that the community itself breaks away. It affects us, doesn't it? We have seen it time and time again. And you know whom it affects the most? The shabab. Because they say, we don't want anything to do with this. We didn't want to come here and be part of our forefathers' arguments. And then they don't come to the Husayniyah or to the masjid. So from a communal perspective, again, it is important to know why we rise and why we fall. At the national level, at the continental level, at the global level, the Quran will speak to us about why our communities rise and fall. For us, inshallah, we're asking this question tonight as an introduction, just for us to be able to base ourselves. what are the 4 potential outcomes that a society may have? Tomorrow night, inshallah, we will look again into the Quran and specifically what the Quran and ahadith say about why a society rises and falls, the specifics, not the outcomes, the specifics of why they rise and why they fall. And then, inshallah, we will begin to look at certain Western philosophers as well. For example, Arnold J. Toynbee, who's written a book, The Rise and Fall of Civilizations. We will look at, for example, Caroline Quigley, who has written historical books on civilizations. We'll look at Bernard Lewis, who looks specifically at the Muslim experience. Why did the Ottoman civilization fall? Why did we end up becoming countries and nation states dominated by France, dominated by Britain, dominated by the United States of America? We used to be an ummah. No such thing as an ummah today, really. We're now nation states, all fighting with each other. Qatar is fighting Al Saud, Yemen is fighting, Bahrain is fighting, Syria is fighting, Iraq is fighting, Iran is fighting. We used to be an ummah. But the moment the Ottoman civilization collapsed, look at where we end up and what we have. Why did that happen? And what can we learn from that history? These will be the talks, inshallah, in our introductions over the first few nights before we come to it. For tonight, inshallah, I have brought a slideshow, or rather, Sayyid actually helped me put the slideshow together, so thank you to you for taking time out for that. And inshallah, we will look at some ahadith and ayat that speak about the question of the outcomes of civilizations, to see that how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the potentialities of our outcomes. And again, I want you to imagine multiple civilizations. Think about, for example, the kingdom of Kutch. Think, for example, about the Roman civilization. Think, for example, about the Persian civilization. Think about the British Empire. Think about the present-day American Empire. Think about, for example, the Muslim community. Which of these ayat refer back to us and the experiences that we've had? And then think about it about 2018 and our own global civilization and how we are teetering on the edge. Which of these ayat refer back to us? The first thing, inshallah, I wish to mention is a hadith. If you can go to the next slide, inshallah, is a hadith from Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. Allahumma sallam. Ali ibn Abi Talib has an amazing letter in Nahj al-Balagha, letter number 31. Does anyone know what letter number 31 is about? Any ideas? Shout out. Anyone? Say again? Not to the governor. After Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam returned from the battle of Siffin, he writes a letter to his son. So there are some commentators who believe that this was to Muhammad al-Hanafiyyah. Other commentators believe this was a letter to our second Imam, Hassan al-Mujtaba, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhi. In either case, this is a beautiful, lengthy letter in which he writes, my age is coming towards the end. I've lived a long life. So now I bequeath to you a wasiyyah so that you may take from me specific advice on how to grow up. Imagine if Ali ibn Abi Talib wrote you a letter. Just imagine for a minute the reality of that. But he did. He writes a letter to all of us with his final advice. And this is an important letter, and I recommend everyone, inshallah, take 5 minutes out tonight when you go home and just read letter 31 from Nahj al-Balagha. I just bring with me one quote for you and I to reflect on in regards to this issue of civilizations, reflecting on the outcomes of civilizations, thinking about our interaction with those previous civilizations. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam writes the following, Ya bunayya, O my dear child, even though I have not reached the age which those before me have, you know, I'm not yet as old as what other people have reached, but I don't know how long I'm going to live for. Just like civilization may collapse at any moment, you and I may collapse at any moment. The smallest clot inaccessible to the human eye, is enough to stop you and I from breathing. O my child, even though I have not reached the age which those before, yet I looked into their behaviors, the previous communities, and thought, I've pondered, I've reflected over the events of their lives. Imagine now, this is Ali ibn Abi Talib saying, I, Ali, took time out to reflect on the civilizations of before. I pondered upon Adam alayhi salam. I pondered upon Nuh alayhi salam and his civilization. I pondered upon Hud and Salih salamullahi alayhim ajma'een, and so on and so forth, on their communities, what happened to them before. And then he says, I walked among their ruins till I was one of them. Subhanallah. You know, may Allah take all of you for Hajj, Umrah, Ziyarah, inshallah, this year and every year. There is a difference between going on Ziyarah, or Umrah, for example, in the state of tourism and the state in which Ali ibn Abi Talib used to visit these past communities. For someone like me, when I go for Ziyarah, for example, for the upcoming Arba'iniyya, I make sure I get as many selfies as I can, and I make sure that I get as many likes as I can, posts as I can, retweets as I can. And therefore my value comes from however many people press like and repost what selfie I put at Tilla or at Mukhayyam or wherever. For Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, this wasn't his primary interest. When he walked in the ruins of history, he became one with them. Those civilizations were no longer there. They were gone. There's no trace of them. But he ponders upon them such that he becomes one with them. He understands the reality of whom and what they were in order to benefit him and so that he can pass on that message to his own son, to you and I. I walked among their ruins till I was one with them, or one of them. In fact, by virtue of their affairs that have become known to me, it is as if that I have lived with them from the first to the last. Amazing. Now this tells us that we too have this God-given potential. Otherwise there would be no point in telling us this. That when he walked in those past places, he didn't just go there for a quick ziyarah, pray the 2 rak'ah salah and run out. He walked and pondered in those areas such that it became as if he lived with them. I go to Masjid Kufa and my goal is to finish the a'mal as quickly as possible. 2 rak'ah in this place, 2 rak'ah in this place, this dua, become very tired after 3 hours, my knees are hurting. I go back and I think, mashallah, I have achieved ziyarah. May Allah accept our a'mal. But that's not ziyarah. That's spiritual tourism. You and I wish to become like the commander of the faithful and the way in which he engaged in those places. When I sit at the maqam in which it is narrated that, for example, Ibrahim alayhi salam was, or Nuh alayhi salam was, or Shu'aib alayhi salam was, the purpose of that is to imbibe that message, to become one with that message, to understand it in its reality. There was once one of the ulama, and he was talking about this issue. And he said one day he went for Umrah, and he was sitting outside the Green Dome in Medina, sitting in a way in which he could just stare at the Green Dome of the Holy Prophet of Islam, Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. He says he sat there and sat there and sat there, and he was thinking to himself, I want to understand the Prophet better than what I understood him when I came here. And he was sitting there for maybe 20 minutes. And he says, after 20 minutes, nothing came to heart, nothing came to mind. I didn't understand the Prophet an iota better than when I sat here before him at the beginning and I came to Medina. Yeah, fine, I will come, I'll give the lecture, I will read about the Prophet, but I didn't understand, the penny didn't drop. There was nothing real that I could have taken away that made me really fathom this man truly better than what I had come with. So as I was sitting there, he says, I complained to the Prophet and I said to him, Ya Rasulullah, I have come on your ziyarah. And what am I going away with? In a little while, the bus leaves to Mecca. I don't understand you better than when I first came here. Ya Rasulullah, I refuse to leave here until you teach me something about you that I hadn't figured before, that I didn't understand, grapple with beforehand. And you know what? I don't care if I have to make the bus late. I'm not going until you teach me something. True story. So after a few minutes, he's sitting there, the head is down, he's not looking at the people, he's not looking at the green dome, he's just pondering upon the life of Rasulullah, Quran, what does it mean, what's the Prophet like? And all of a sudden, a penny drops. The eyes open, he says. And he says to himself, you know what I've just realized? That everything that the previous prophets went through, the Holy Prophet of Islam went through himself. If you think about all the previous prophets, by and large, they all had one primary challenge in their own society. Shu'aib alayhi salam, for example, the challenge was there was corruption in the markets. Lut alayhi salam, his community were practicing a type of homosexuality, and so on and so forth. Each community had one primary problem. But the Prophet had each of those revealed in the Quran to him and therefore to his own community. Therefore, his own community must too have had those same problems. Otherwise, they would have said, oh Muhammad, why are you bothering telling us about this issue? We don't have this problem in our society. But they didn't say that. When the story of Shu'aib or Lut, Salih, or Hud, salamullahi alayhim ajma'in, came, no one of the Arab societies said, we don't have this issue. Why are you bother telling us about this lesson? Doesn't make sense. None of them said that. Which means every one in the Arab society had that problem, that challenge to them. The alim said, I realized how great was the Prophet. The previous prophets had one challenge to deal with. The Prophet had his own society and all the challenges of the previous prophets put together. He got up, said, Salaamu alayk ya Rasulullah, and went towards Mecca. Why? Because he asked the Prophet, you tell me something that I didn't understand before. And that's the way in which he grew and appreciated the Prophet at a level in which he hadn't done before. Ali ibn Abi Talib is telling us about that understanding of the previous civilizations. He says, in fact, by virtue of those, of their affairs, and that have become known to me, it is as if I have lived with them from the first to the last community. I have therefore been able to discern the impure from the clean and the benefit from the harm. These are the words of Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. So now, inshallah, we go towards some ayat and then conclude, inshallah. So if we can go to the next slide. We will look here at some verses that start off by telling us that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns you and I. We have destroyed civilizations prior to you that were stronger than you. Don't think for a second that we can't do to you what we did to the previous civilizations. You think you're so strong with your nuclear weapons? You think you're so strong with your large buildings? All the previous civilizations could be destroyed. Ours can also fall apart at the same pace as what the Muslims did at the time of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. So as an example, 3 verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in chapter number 6, verse 6, do they not consider how many a generation we destroyed before them, whom we had established in the earth, as we have not established you. Not established you. You think you're strong, O people of Mecca and Medina? We have not established you the way in which we established those communities before you. They were stronger than you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. Next slide, inshallah. I don't know if... thank you very much. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَكَمْ أَهْلَكْنَا قَبْلَهُمْ مِنْ قَرْنٍ هُمْ أَحْسَنُوا أَثَاثًا وَرِئِيًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, how many a generation have we destroyed before their time, a people who surpassed them in material power and in outward show. They were stronger in their community. Jazakumullah khair. But we destroyed them. Third verse, next slide inshallah. Chapter number 50, verse number 36, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala repeats again for a third time. Those communities were stronger than you. Don't think that you are safe. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states, and how many a people have we destroyed before those who now deny the truth. A people of greater might than them. أَشَدُّ مِنْهُمْ بَطْشًا فَنَقَّبُوا فِي الْبِلَادِ هَلْ مِن مَحِيصٍ. But when our chastisement befell them, they became wanderers on the face of the earth, seeking no more than just refuge. This is the outcome of those communities. So now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions 4 potential outcomes of any given society. Meaning that these could be the potential. And when you go on holiday to Turkey, when you go on holiday to, Jordan, when you go on holiday to Egypt, when you go to India, all of these different verses can apply to different societies. And you can think about whether these societies fall into which category of these particular 4 verses. Okay, so now, if we can go to the next slide, inshallah. These are going to be 3 types of outcomes. There are 4, and I'm going to show you 3 now, and then we'll conclude, inshallah. The 3 types of outcomes from divine destruction. The first type of potential outcome is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may destroy a community and leave no trace of them whatsoever. That's the first potential outcome. That you won't even know that you're standing on a civilization that used to exist. You won't hear anything from them. You won't be able to identify their marks. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states in Surah Maryam, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَكَمْ أَهْلَكْنَا قَبْلَهُمْ مِنْ قَرْنٍ هَلْ تُحِسُّ مِنْهُمْ مِنْ أَحَدٍ أَوْ تَسْمَعُ لَهُمْ رِكْزًا. How many a generation have we destroyed before their time? Can you perceive any one of them? Can you even tell where they are? Or hear any whisper from them? The first type of destruction is one that is annihilated such that you won't even be able to find a trace of those individuals. Next slide, inshallah. Go back, inshallah. Sorry. Go. Okay, so there should be a B. Where is B? Go forward again. Okay, so there is one verse that's missing, I think. But we'll find it, inshallah. And if we need to, we'll come back to it tomorrow. So there is a second type. There is a B, but we will come to it, inshallah. But there's a third type of destruction that comes to a community, whereby they shall be replaced, or they shall not be replaced. So, for example, the second type of community is that they will not be replaced, and another type of community is they shall be replaced. Inshallah, tomorrow we'll bring the additional slide for you. But this verse says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَكَمْ أَهْلَكْنَا مِنْ قَرْيَةٍ. And how many a community that once exulted in its wealth and ease of life have we destroyed, so that those dwelling places of theirs, all but a few, have never been dwelt in after them. Sometimes a community is destroyed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they are not dwelt in, and sometimes they are dwelt in. Meaning that Allah destroys it and then doesn't replace them, and then there's another type of community Allah does destroy and then He replaces them. So you're actually living and you will see that society that was there before you, and you will see the effects of those previous societies. So here there are three types of outcomes of the destruction. Next slide, inshallah. In any case, depending on whichever three of these outcomes, either that you will find no trace of them, you will find a trace of them, but they will not be rebuilt upon, or you will find a trace of them, but they will not be rebuilt upon. In any case, all of the outcomes are they will never return back. Those civilizations are gone. Those people have been destroyed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَلَمْ يَرَوْا كَمْ أَهْلَكْنَا قَبْلُهُمْ مِنَ الْقُرُونِ أَنَّهُمْ إِلَيْهِمْ لَا يَرْجِعُونَ. In Surah Yasin. Are they not aware of how many a generation we have destroyed before their time, and that those that have perished, they shall never return? These are the three potential outcomes of a civilization in terms of their destruction. One, you will never find their histories. You won't even know that they existed. Number two, you will know they existed, but you will not be replacing them. You will not live on their land. And the third is when they're destroyed, you will know that they have been replaced, and you will be living on their land. You will dwell on what happened before. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing us here what? As a conclusion to these three verses. All of us are expendable. He can destroy us, replace us, life will go on. Our civilization won't. What we spent so much money and time building, all those high-rise buildings, all that gloss, all those shiny things, all the beautiful things that we created, it can be gone in a second, and the rest of it will all continue. And they will just look at us in our history and say, you spent all your time doing that only to be destroyed at the end of it? Same way you and I can have that as an individual. You can have the beautifulest of house, car, name, TV screen, plasma screen, 11.1 surround sound system. It will go. You will not take any of it with you, I promise. And someone else will inherit it. Someone else will use it, and they will forget you that you had it in the first place. In fact, likely they will even sell it because they would rather have the money than what is given to them. It's all going to go. Be it the individual or be it the civilization. But there is a fourth type of community which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about. And that is the one that endures. That is the one that achieves. That is the one that remains and is praised by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which we started with in our Arabic khutbah, which is going to be the foundation of the entirety of our series. In chapter number 3, verse number 110, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas ta'maruna bil ma'ruf wa tanhawna 'anil munkar. You are the best of nations heralded for mankind. You've accomplished. You've reached the pedestal. I've told you about all of those communities that I've destroyed, why I've destroyed them, how I've destroyed them. But your civilization, it's the best that's ever come for mankind. You know why? تَأْمَرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَتَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. All you did was call people towards good and forbid the evil. And because you did that, you are the most privileged, praise-worthy society in the history of all mankind. And then you go back to that mission statement of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. إِنِّي لَمْ أَخْرُجْ أَشِرًا وَلَا بَطِرًا وَلَا مُفْسِدًا وَلَا ظَالِمًا وَإِنَّمَا خَرَجْتُ لِطَلَبِ الْإِصْلَاحِ. Why am I trying to create Islah? How am I going to do it? أَمْرُ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَالنَّهِي عَنِ الْ. It just took for calling towards good and forbidding the evil for that civilization, that Muslim society, which first reached its potential and then dropped like a cliff. Hussein ibn Ali, Sayyid al-Shuhada, Abu al-Ahrar, was the one to bring it back towards its helm only by calling towards good and forbidding evil. It was that simple. Just by doing that, it was able to save the Muslim society from destruction. And for you and I, if we were to do what Imam alayhi salam set out to do in his movement, we too would save our own communities, our own states, our own global civilization as well. Dear brothers and sisters, this will be our topic, inshallah, over these next 9 nights. We will look tomorrow night at what the Quran and Ahadith say specifically about how a civilization rises and why it falls. And then, inshallah, we will begin to look at what various Western philosophers say, and then we will pick some of the greatest challenges that we have in our time and talk about how you and I will be part and parcel of that movement to ensure the flourishing of our societies, the helm or our own global community reaching again kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas, because we followed the movement of Sayyid al-Shuhada Aba Abdullah al-Hussein salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. When Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan wanted to pass power onto Yazid ibn Muawiyah, his son, he did so by breaking the treaty and the agreement that he had put in place with Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. Amongst the conditions of the sulh was that if he was to die, Muawiyah, that Khilafat would return back to Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam. Firstly to Imam al-Hasan, and in the absence of Imam al-Hasan to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. He broke this. One of those came towards Muawiyah and said to him, Muawiyah, there has been such war, devastation in the ummah. If now you were to pass it back, war would erupt again. And so it would be better for you to be able to hold on to Khilafat and pass it on to Yazid to ensure that it remains within the clutches of Banu Umayyah. La'natullahi alayhim ajma'in. Now, irrespective of whether this has been recorded in history later as an excuse to try to place Muawiyah in some positive light, as if he tried to stop war from amongst the Muslims or not, let us accept that the hadith is true, as an example. In either case, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Awfu bil uqud, that you should uphold your covenants and commitments. The hadith from the Holy Prophet of Islam, Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, states, Al-mu'min idha wa'ada sadaqa. The mu'min, if he makes a commitment, a promise, he upholds it. He's truthful to it. Meaning if you don't do that, you're not a mu'min. Meaning Muawiyah, of course, could not be considered to be a proper believer. He passes this on to Yazid. In doing so, one narration says that Muawiyah gathered 4 leaders of the Muslim Ummah, amongst them being Hussein ibn Ali, salamullahi alayhi, and forced them into a room to talk about the Khilafat. Muawiyah then took 2 guards on each one of the 4 leaders of the Ummah and put swords on their necks and said, if you do not accept what is about to happen, you will be cut here and now. And then he brought out Yazid and placed him as caliph over them. Having then departed, they go into the masjid and announce, Muawiyah announces that Khilafat shall pass to his son, beginning the dynasty of kingship of Banu Umayyah, from one king to another. Is this really the way in which Islam was supposed to be? Of course not. Yet, the Muslim Ummah was forced into accepting this at that moment. When Muawiyah dies, and ends up where he ends up, Yazid is then told, force allegiance upon Hussein ibn Ali. In fact, This was mentioned in the wasiyyah of Muawiyah to Yazid, who says that amongst the Muslim leadership that you must get bay'ah from, Hussein ibn Ali must give you bay'ah. And if he doesn't, then you must kill him. In the darkness of the night, they call Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam towards the governor's office and say to him, Muawiyah has died, Yazid commands bay'ah from you. To which Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam famously responds in a loud voice, do you think a man like me can give bay'ah to a man like him? Do you not know who we, Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam, are? From our house came revelation. It is our house in which the angels come to and go back and ascend from. This house of Banu Umayyah, this is a house of drunkardness. A man like me can never give bay'ah to a man like him. And it was this point that Hussein ibn Ali had to leave, gather the family, and begin that depart towards Karbala, in which eventually he would give his life. When he does so, the hadith tells us that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam spends a last night in the city of Medina. We are told in the hadith that Imam goes towards the grave of his grandfather and goes towards the grave of his mother. As he goes towards the grave of his grandfather, he sits beside that grave and he begins to weep and complain to his grandfather as to what has occurred. He begins to recite and say, "Oh my grandfather, you have seen the oppression upon us. You have seen what they have tried to do. You have seen the way in which they have broken their treaties and their responsibilities towards us. Grandfather, I bid you farewell, for tonight is the last night in the city of Medina." The narration says that as he weeps, eventually Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam falls asleep at the grave of his grandfather. As he does so, he sees in his dream all of his family members. He sees his grandfather Rasulullah. He sees, for example, his great uncle Hamza. He sees, for example, his grandfather Abu Talib. And he sees his father Ali ibn Abi Talib. It is said that as they are lined up in front of him, he extends his hand and he says, "Oh my grandfather, Ya Rasulullah, please call me back towards you. I do not wish to live amongst these wretched, tyrannous people any longer. Call me back towards you, because I wish to come towards where you are stating, where you are living, where you are staying." The hadith says Rasulullah looks back towards his grandson. He says, "Oh Hussein, there is for you a station here in Jannah, and that can only be achieved by martyrdom. You must leave towards Karbala, and for in Karbala when you are killed, this is how you will reach this great station. We are waiting for you with open arms. Come towards us, O Aba Abdullah." Hussein ibn Ali awakens. He now knows that he must depart Medina for that last time. He gathers his family members. He gathers the women and children. And as he begins to depart, it is said that from amongst his family members, one of them comes to him. Muhammad al-Hanafiya comes to him and says, "Oh Hussein, I understand that you now have to depart. I understand that you must go to bring about this revolution. But why do you bring the women and children? Why do you bring Zainab and Kulthum? Why do you bring Ruqayya? Why do you bring Sukaina? Why do you bring all of these women and children with you on your movement?" Hussein responds and says, "Allah wishes to see them in their custody. Allah wishes to see them when they are captive. For Allah wants to know how they will react and to see them bring about the revolution of khair in this ummah." ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten the appearance of Imam al-Mahdi alayhi salam, to allow us to be alongside him at all times in our life and in our death. If we are to pass away from this world before his coming, Ya Allah, raise us from our graves so that we may partake in the victories of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. We ask you, Ya Allah, there are many people around the world going through such desperate times, those people in a state of war, poverty, homelessness, disease and disaster. Ya Allah, grant them all safety, security and victory for the sake of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. And we ask you, Ya Allah, in the final moments of our life, we die in the love of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Matim Hussein, Ya Hussein.
If everyone can stand up and come close, inshallah. Participate as much as you can with the matam, and inshallah it will all be accepted in the name of Imam Hussein and the Ahlul Bayt. With a loud salawat. Everyone come closer, inshallah. Come closer. Hussein Thar Allah Aba Abdullah, Hussein Thar Allah Aba Abdullah. Very simple chorus, inshallah. Hussein Thar Allah Aba Abdullah, Hussein Thar Allah Aba Abdullah. Everyone, Hussein Thar Allah Aba Abdullah, Hussein Thar Allah Aba Abdullah. Louder, brothers, inshallah. Hussein Thar Allah Aba Abdullah, Hussein Thar Allah Aba Abdullah. Once again I will start my walk to you, oh my Hussein. Karbala, Karbala to you, oh my Hussein. Karbala, Karbala, boy. Once again I will start my walk to you, oh my Hussein. Karbala, Karbala to you, oh my Hussein. Karbala, Karbala, boy. My love rises every step I take. My love rises every step I take. Inshallah I will make where Zahra awaits. Hussein Thar Allah Aba Abdullah, Hussein Thar Allah Abdullah. MashaAllah, brothers. Hussein Thar Allah Aba. Once again, everyone. Oh, Hussein Thar Allah. MashaAllah. Oh, Hussein Thar Allah. من و این همه غم ارباب برم به حرم. ارباب برم به حرم. ارباب وای. نفس من شعر غم تو. نفس من شعر غم تو. ایشالله بمیرم تو حرم تو. حسین ثار الله ابا عبدالله. Everyone inshallah. Hussein ابا عبدالله. حسین ثار الله ابا عبدالله. Everyone once again. حسین ثار ابا عبدالله. حسین ثار الله ابا. Oh, with my heart I will call your name, Master. I will rise when I call Hussein, Hussein. I will die calling you Master Hussein, boy. I see your flag flying in the sky. I see your flag flying in the sky. Until the day I die, I will raise it high. Hussein thought Allah, Abu Abdullah. Hussein thought Allah. Hussein thought Allah. No